Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 4 of Duffington Talks. This podcast is almost a month old, I guess. With the fourth episode, fourth week of doing this podcast. Again, really enjoying it. Really happy to keep going, and we've sort of had our first ongoing story. That's the first thing we're going to cover in the podcast, which is Trump, who's being indicted. Um, and they'll have to go to court. And the second story we're going to focus on is a statement made by the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, and that he won't let political correctness stop the crackdown on vile grooming gangs. And yeah, a lot more culture war stuff, and we'll get into why it's culture war stuff in the second part of this podcast. But we start off with Trump, the captivating figure that he is. Um, so we'll just start off with what he's actually been indicted over. He was investigating. He paid $130,000 payout to Stormy Daniels in an attempt to buy her silence over an alleged affair. Um, he's actually been indicted for his team, his lawyer Michael Cohen paid the money to keep Miss Daniels quiet. That's not illegal. That's fine. However, Trump reimbursed his lawyer. The record of payment said it was for legal fees, and that's falsifying business records, which is a misdemeanor. And the other thing was um, it could allege that it's um, breaking election law um, by his attempt to hide his payment because it was motivated by wanting to not let voters know that he had an affair. So that's how they're stringing the sort of political motive on it. So it's an interesting sort of situation, one that we'll have to see unfold. And it's going political at the moment, so uh, they're getting the as we looked at last week with the sort of reactions. They're very much reacting from both the right and the left in ways that we'd expect. But I wanted to have a look at some polls. So we'll start off with Trump, who is running for president in 2024, and obviously the first thing is that um, if he is arrested and he goes to prison, he can't run for president. So that's the first thing. Um, but the interesting sort of thing about the polls is that Trump's lead since about a month ago, when all this started, when they declared they were investigating Trump for this payment, Trump's lead has actually been growing, and it continues to grow even following the indictment. Yahoo News YouGov poll um, of the so-called Republican leadership race, because the number two person that's been polled, DeSantis, is not actually officially in the race yet. So you have Ron DeSantis. You have Trump. Sorry, Trump is at 52% of the Republican vote, and then you have Ron DeSantis, who's not officially declared, but he's being touted as the closest person to compete with Trump at 21%. Um, so a big lead, and the person following behind Trump is former ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, 5%, and then former Vice President Mike Pence with 3%. So not much competition in this race at the moment, and it is fascinating to see it, like with the polling. Obviously, polls are not set in stone. They're not necessarily inherently accurate, but considering how we saw, considering the polls we saw with Trump in the Republican race, when everyone was even the majority of the polls were saying that he had no chance of winning, and we all know how that turned out. So there could be an element of they're trying to overcompensate, and it could be closer than it is. I've got some data on that we'll look at in a second, but it is really interesting uh, to see, like, how Trump manages to not even survive. He thrives from these controversies. It's like his base like to see him in controversy because he pushes through it. He's Teflon Don. Nothing sticks to him. He does push through these things in a very impressive way. And I mean, in a way, Trump is a really, really good populist. Like, he's managed to um, be so persuasive to his base, and that was the thing, is, but whether we were going to see protests and sort of weaponized rallies against Trump, we're not really seeing it. But I don't think they need to, because they're supporting him, where it matters in the race. 54% of Republicans and Republican-leaning independents would prefer Trump for the nominee. So it's in 2024. It's a recent poll, the most recent poll that we have on that, and so that's sort of in line with Trump's lead. Obviously, Trump's lead is 52. This most recent poll is 54. So around the same number. So Trump has managed to get half the Republican Party, and then the other half are sort of fighting out at the moment for a supporter. Um, uh, the number is 3 points higher than the 51% that preferred Trump in the last poll as well. So very interesting statistics that we have to go on this. And then in terms of Trump's indictment more specifically, 39% of adults said they were enthusiastic or satisfied, 37% are dissatisfied or angry. That's the perfect poll to highlight the sort of polarization of American politics. I mean, it's 39 to 37. Respondents were also split on the motivation, 43% believing the political bias and 42% saying genuine desire to hold Trump accountable. 43 and 42, 39 and 37. Unbelievably polarized position that America is in at the moment. It is incredible. They're on, every single issue that we're starting to see at the moment. It's like the 50-50 split of, well, they're saying this, they're saying that. I think it's very rare, and the things that get the most success are the things that are cross party, and especially with Biden at the moment not really being as left as some of the Democrats would want the party to be. This is an interesting position we're in, and if according to the most recent poll we have on polling Biden versus Trump, Biden is up only by 2 points. It's 45 to 43. Poll conducted March 30th to 31st with a 3.3% margin for error. So it's close. It's very close. And I mean, this is what I was going to say, where the Republican Party maybe a bit, we can maybe give a bit of a bit more of the benefit to Trump in terms of the Republican Party more specifically, because if we look at the Republican Party, they're not so um, they're not so united, but I think it certainly reflects the wider trend of the party in general. So with the a poll the poll by ABC News and Ipsos about Trump specifically being charged. Republicans, 62% of Republicans say that Trump should not have been charged. 1 in 5 Republicans say that they don't know. 16% said he should have been charged. Per that poll. However, it looks like so there's an ABC News article that says the Republicans are less united. However, I certainly think it's in line, with the data we've just looked at with Trump's actual support in party. Trump has got about half the party support, and he's got 62% of them saying that he shouldn't be charged. It's interesting to sort of see see the data come out, because this is pretty much in put it together, if we put it in context, we see the sort of line that's being created here with the Republicans. Trump clearly has a base, and some Republicans are sort of don't think Trump should be charged. They may have and also with the American system, obviously people drop out in primaries. They may have a preferred candidate that, if he drops out, would then sort of default onto Trump. So this is the issue of polling. This is why it seems quite polarized, with sort of 52-25, and then the next highest being on 5 and then 2, because you've got a lot of names in the ring. It's very early days. But statistically, Trump, the Republican Party and Trump's percentage point lead seem to be in line, which is, very interesting, to say the least. And then the independent split is crazy. Again, with the polarization, and the Democrat we'll get to in a second, but the independent split is 32% saying he shouldn't have been charged, 27% saying don't know, and 2 and 5 saying he should have been charged. We're just sort of, seeing this very, very obviously independents, people that sort of non-affiliated. People might vote Libertarian, Greens, and they're the two major other parties. If you're not voting for the Republicans or the Democrats, it's big news in America. This polarization, and the data is very highlighting it. And then we come into the Democrats. I mean, 88%, so it's almost 9 in 10 Democrats, 88%, think Trump should have been charged, agreeing with the poll. So we don't think we have the don't know statistics. I'm looking at Ipsos now. So with the Democrats, don't know, what's that, 19% for don't know. I don't think anyone said. So we have struggling to read this graph because I'm silly. Yeah, so it's 19%. Yeah, ignore that. I can't see the don't know statistic at the moment, so that's my bad. But yeah, so 88% is an incredibly high number. It's I mean, the Republican Party obviously more divided, but I think that whilst people might be, making a meal out of that, saying that the Democrats are more united, that doesn't mean that the Democrats are more united. It means that the Democrats equally don't like Trump. I think that's what we've got to take away from it. The Democrats will vote, and a lot of them will do it, embittered. Especially a lot of like the Bernie Sanders supporters. I know that, begrudgingly they will vote for Biden again over Trump because they don't want the Republicans. It's literally like voting. And I know not everyone will do that, because it's not as simple as that. People will be maybe so frustrated, and the longer you leave this sort of polarization, the worse it will get. But people are starting to. People would be so embittered they'll vote for someone else, like they'll vote Green, you know, just that completely out of protest. And that's one thing that we've got to start sort of being aware of. I mean, it is the crazy statistic that 9 in 10, the Democrats almost completely in favor of pressing charges on Trump. And obviously, I think that you have some Democrats, you have some Southern Democrats that will still sort of align with Republican ideals. Obviously, they're being weaned out, but in terms of people thinking that Trump shouldn't have been charged, that there'll be a number of sort of Southern Democrats, I'd say, that that would agree with Trump but still vote Democrat, as as they have always done. A lot of American voting is sort of there's not that those flip flop voters, very fine margins of convincing people. And I guess it's very generational, as we saw with the midterms, with the youth supporting the Democrats in an incredible amount. The Republicans are really the party of the old, and the Democrats the party of the new, statistically, that is, or with statistics of voters. So bring this into Trump overall. I mean, it's incredible that Trump is doing so well, but I think it is testament to how Trump survives, and so how can we bring this into the sort of upcoming election? Well, I think that if Trump survives the actual case and he runs for president, I think that Trump has a real chance. I don't know um, whether he has a chance against Biden, not because I don't think um, he can sort of out debate Biden, but I see that the left, the Democrats, and all of the people on the left will really default to Biden um, because they don't want Trump. And it will be that desperate, um, that desperate a situation. But then again, the Republicans, Trump's not coming from as an outsider position now, and he's actually coming into the race with a lead. Which is an interesting situation because if this lead continues to grow and he snowballs, um, in a positive sense, he just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Um, then I really really see Trump, putting putting pressure on the election, and now with Biden having one term as president, Trump has ammunition that he didn't have when he was president. Biden pretty much came in, from watching a lot of the sort of debating that was being done. Biden came in with pretty much with the line that I'm not Trump. There was nothing really and it was also the financial situation in America. Trump's handling of COVID was one of the big issues, but it was pretty much, well, I'm not him. I'm going to do everything differently, which is fine if the country's um in your opinion, in the opinion of the people voting, if it's going to mess, if people are struggling. Obviously, a lot of people were struggling during COVID. Ridiculous amount of people. There was no real welfare scheme to help the people financially, and Biden ran on we're giving them money. Well, we'll come in and I'll make these changes, and that can win enough people over. But you can't run on the I'm not Trump line now. I mean, you can for a lot of the Democrats. Okay, you win 88% of already confirmed, Democrats. Well, good job, but you've got to fight on over these battleground states. It's going to be a fine margin run. It's pure speculation, but I don't see Trump not being there. I don't see it not being a Trump versus Biden run again. I really don't. I struggle to see uh, DeSantis pull the support that he needs to defeat Trump. And the reason why is because Trump is such a populist figure. I think that he will convince the Republicans that he is the man to defeat Biden. And I genuinely think that he probably is the man to defeat Biden. And the reason why I'm saying that is because I think it's perfectly reflective of American politics. It is so divided. It's not like you can't, Trump sort of plays the right game in terms of the right wing game, and Biden has to play the left. I mean, Biden doesn't even play the left wing game. Biden is like centre left, if that. But that's how you see as Marjorie Taylor Greene came out saying that, calling the Democrats communist. I mean, you have to be so so poorly read to think that anything that the Democrats are doing at the moment is anywhere near communist. Like, it's just, but they play on the American left-wing fears that still run deep to this day. This distrust of anything on the left, ingrained by the Cold War, and the Republicans, and especially sort of Trump's wing of the Republican Party at the moment, play on that so perfectly to get people to bring people into the fold. And so I think that if anyone was to beat Biden, I think you'd have to go with Trump. And I think that in the debates, then what you'd see is Trump going on the offensive because he's in a position to do so, especially if he's against Biden, who's just been president. So just throwing in my 2 cents, I do see Trump very early doors, and obviously this will be an ongoing situation on the podcast itself. But I see Trump up there. I see Trump in the fight, and if I had to give my personal opinion on who I want to win, I'd say Bernie Sanders. Although I think he's too old. Yeah, no. I dislike both of them. I mean, I dislike Trump because let's be honest, like politically, Trump is is very moderate. Like in terms of his actual real politics, not what he runs on, not all this rhetoric um that he comes up with. Like you see him on. I was talking to Piers Morgan, and Piers wasn't interrupting him. A friend of mine brought this up, about how I don't like Piers Morgan as because I feel like as an interviewer he's biased and he's not very good at interviewing because he interrupts people and then he didn't interrupt Trump and he apologized for interrupting Trump. Obviously, massive bias, poor interviewing. If you're gonna if your style is interrupting people, make that your style. Don't sort of kowtow to the people or don't interrupt people. Full stop, really. Because if you want to be antagonistic to all of the people you disagree with, it's not helpful. But yeah, no, he didn't interrupt Trump. He let Trump speak, and I think that they get along with a lot of their views because they're pretty much aligned. So Piers Morgan, who is a sort of right leaning or socially right leaning person in Britain, and Trump are aligned. So Trump is pretty much centre right. Personally, however, he plays the line of you can't pin him down when he's giving his speeches because he's not. There's so much not policy. I mean, he's an isolationist in terms of his wanting to fight China and gaining American jobs, and people will highlight that sort of as nationalistic, but America, I think American nationalism or sort of American exceptionism runs across party lines. So that's why I think Trump is quite effective at what he does, because there's not in the UK, for example, we have the Conservatives running on the sort of nationalistic elements of society. If you look at in the culture war, and we're going to turn to that in a second, um, but in America it doesn't work like that because they have such higher national pride that, and this is, I think it links to the sort of fear of the communist Democrats, is that calling someone the communist Democrats means that they don't like America, and that link, you're a threat to America because you're communist. It's that sort of that rhetoric goes so well with convincing voters to not vote for people, and that's where I think that Trump plays the game, and I don't support Trump on either way there because I just feel that what America needs is it needs some great coalition and cooperation, and I don't think it's going to get there because they just I have no solution at the moment, but gosh, they need some cooperation. And then Biden, I don't support Biden because I think Biden doesn't have anything. He literally comes in with no real idea, no real solutions. They've got no real platform. They're pushed to the left by a lot of the people that really should have um, won the race, and the Democrats as a party, as an institution, are very sort of I mean, not even centre left. They appear very socially where they want to be, but economically I don't economically and that sort of the wider running of the country, I don't see them as any different from the Republicans or much different. I mean, there are minor differences, but they're really not there. Like, it's the social issues that they're fighting over at the moment, and maybe the isolationism of Trump is disagreed upon, but they and the one person that really wants to fight on, or that did, I don't think Bernie's got to the point now where he's past it, but Bernie Sanders, especially in 2016, he was the guy because he had two fronts, but Bernie had he had two sides to him. He had the social side, which he has a long history of, and then he had the economic side, and he had things that he could criticize, and the only insult people could throw against him was, oh yeah, you don't want billionaires to exist, oh but you have money too. It's if your only insult on someone in a political sense is personal, you don't you've lost. If you having to and the reason why is because when somebody says like a hypothetical that they're including themselves. But like, if somebody wants to change the world, and this is the same for um, celebrities that talk about climate action and then fly around on private jets. Well, now obviously a lot of them do that for their own personal, safety and circumstance. Because if they go to an airport, they're going to be harassed by people, be that members of the public, news, whoever, and then people talk about politicians that do it, and politicians obviously go around in private crafts for their own safety, because they can't just be around with the public. Lord knows what's going to happen. So when you make attacks personal, you're trying to bypass the actual argument that's being outlined by the other person, and you're then going for, oh yeah, but you don't do that, so you're a hypocrite. That No, because there's another reason X and reason Y don't correlate, so you can't say they're the same thing. And that's the only thing that I really saw, and again, a lot of this is off memory, but I really didn't see anything stick on Bernie that I mean, the stuff that was sticking on Hillary, for example. The Democrats, some of the left Democrats were saying it, before Trump was saying it, about how she was not trustworthy, and I don't think Hillary's loss was that big a shock. I mean, with Trump's rise and Hillary's fall, um, in 2016 was pretty much because Trump could weaponize, not I mean, it's the personal, but it's also the past. It's the, well, she's untrustworthy, and this is her in a government role being untrustworthy. I didn't see it they had anything on Bernie, and I think that sort of, I'm not too into linchpin history, but that sort of that mistake in 2016 of the organization favoring Hillary Clinton has really done the damage. And I don't see the Democrats recovering from that. I don't like the the sort of institution of the Democrats. I don't see them as trying to solve anything, because a lot of the mainstream politicians obviously are quite comfortable in terms of. I know re-election is a massive problem in America, where politicians win re-election way too frequently, way more frequently than British politicians do. Um, it becomes really hard to remove incumbents once they're in. Obviously, not impossible, but especially in the Senate, I think it's quite difficult. There isn't much swing, and so just as a sort of uh, reflective of the country, I think that neither party is right, and where America goes, I I can't offer that solution without some serious because serious discourse is needed, and the discourse is it's not just on on the divide, but it's also um it's on the polarization on every single issue. The sort of what America is talking about at the moment is horribly problematic, because America is going into this culture war sort of method, and it's just not going to work out, because it, the culture war is only going to further polarize the country. And unless there is some kind of pivot, well, neither side is going to move. I mean, you'll start to see like serious echo chambers being created. And I know this is a solution. This is a solution. This is a problem. Sorry, that we've had since social media. But now in America, you have obviously the big right wing echo chamber being Fox News, in terms of the sort of mainstream news, and then if you want new media, you've got Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro's network, and obviously loads of other right wing commentators scattered around. But in terms of the big organizations, you've got two big ones on the right, and then on the left. Well, on the left, you have this sort of weird split where a lot of the new media, so a lot of the YouTube, podcast, internet sort of people, um, are on the sort of Bernie Sanders left, um, the furthering of the party, and then you've got sort of MSNBC, on the more centre-left side. So, in terms of echo chambers, they exist to say that the Republican echo chambers are more agreeable with themselves than the Democrat echo chambers. But that's just the nature of the parties and their actual real sort of policy internal policy divides. The culture war, the Republicans are pretty equal on it. So yeah, that will be a problem in itself. Getting rid of those echo chambers, well, you're not going to do that in a hurry, and that will only worsen the situation. So I don't see a solution for that, and I feel that, we saw unprecedented Democrat support in the youth in the midterms, but I don't know if that sort of momentum will hold on, and if it does, that will be an interesting one because that may be the big change. But we'll have to wait and see with that. And now on to our second story of the week, and really it's sort of come to a head today with the sort of grooming gangs, well, so-called grooming gangs, I'll say, and Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, saying that political correctness will not stop crackdowns on vile grooming gangs, and essentially saying that these suspects are hiding behind cultural sensitivities, evading justice. This is from Downing Street. And what they want to do is they want better data on the makeup of grooming gangs, the makeup being ethnicity, age, sort of those sort of features. And they've come out swinging, the Conservatives. So they've come out obviously with the rhetoric, with your sort of political correctness, using look, we're using the correct terminology, and then they've come out with with policy. So, one for one, one for another. The policy needs to be done. Obviously, you should be these horrible exploitative crimes, and so we have specialist officers helping the police forces with child sexual exploitation and abuse investigation. So you have a special investigator who is an expert in that area, which is good. That's what you need. But then alongside this, it's come out with the rhetoric, and well, we'll start off obviously with the context. So they want data, sort of the wide range of data to be looking at the criminals. Now this has been met with a wide range of pushback. So we had former Justice Secretary Robert Buckland saying at Sky News that we should be focusing on the victims, and that there have been times in our past where, for whatever reason, cultural sensitivities have been put first and foremost, and that's wrong. Yes, so you're sort of playing the line of, I think it was the Rotherham grooming gangs, which was, the massive scandal where, if I'm not mistaken, one of the reasons why that was such a problem, so we're told it was such a problem with the police in the area, is because they were hesitant of accusations about being called racist. I think that that's one of the things that came out on that specific case. So there is pop evidence there that in some cases, you have to. This is crime. I'm an individualist when it comes to a lot of things, and I would say I'm certainly an individualist when it comes to crime, and I feel like it's problematic whenever anyone makes a wide ethnicity ethnicity to crime comparison, because I'm also, I believe in the multi-layered nature of why people do things, and so I believe that that can be one cause. I guess I don't think that it could really ever be a cause, but if you're hypothetically living in a certain neighborhood where opportunistic crimes tend to occur, and that neighborhood happens to be of a majority ethnicity. There's a link, but then there's another link, and there's normally a reason, and the reason is not as straightforward as it seems. These are in-depth, complex situations that can't be boiled down to people hiding behind, um, cultural sensitivities, because cultural sensitivities can withhold the police just as much as they can protect the guilty. So that's something we've got to tackle there. But abuse is abuse, as Robert Buckland goes on to say. And so the Prime Minister basically making a task force um, to combat this. He said the safety of women and girls is paramount. And then he says, for too long, political correctness has stopped us from weeding out vile criminals who prey on children and young women. We will stop at nothing to stamp out these dangerous gangs. So, very much targeting grooming gangs. They want legislation in. And then we had yesterday, we had Suella Braverman, who was on Sky. This is from the Sky article, but probably did the rounds. And that's people working with children in England will have a new legal duty to report knowledge or suspicions of child sex abuse. Because again, they're not making this is an issue. This is a horrible issue. But then this is what I say. They're making it in part of the culture war, because then she says she singled out gangs of British Pakistani men as she accused authorities of turning a blind eye to abuse over fears of being labelled racist or bigoted. She showed Sophie Ridge on Sky, Sophie Ridge on Sunday, the programme. It's clear that what we've seen is a practice whereby vulnerable white English girls, sometimes in care, sometimes who are in challenging circumstances, being pursued and raped and drugged and harmed by gangs of British Pakistani men who've worked in a child abuse rings or networks. It's now down to the authorities to track these perpetrators down without fear or favour relentlessly. Bring this in, all favour relentlessly and bring them to justice. Didn't make sense in my head the first time when I was pre-reading it, so absolutely stuttered. So again, okay, we have a narrative. We've got the probable cause, protection of children and women. That's perfectly fine. I mean, perfectly fine. That's what the country needs to be safer. It's a serious issue at the moment. We've seen it's a serious issue, and the government glad that they're doing something about it. Now, Labour, and rightfully so, I think Labour came out and said. Shadow Home Secretary Yvette Cooper came out and said, well, ministers have known about the role of organised gangs in child exploitation for years, yet when Labour called for mandatory reporting and expanded police specialist teams nearly a decade ago, they failed to act and have dragged their heels ever since. And I think that line of mandatory reporting and expanded police specialist teams was in their, I think that was in their 2015 manifesto. I saw somewhere, I may have seen that from Twitter, that so what the government are doing now, I think was in Labour's manifesto. Yeah, so nearly a decade ago. I think it was in their 2015, the 2015 election manifesto. Maybe mistaken on that, and I can't remember where I saw that. But yeah, I saw that this morning. I think that was from Twitter. Either way, this has been Labour line in terms of the actual policy. This has been Labour line for since I'm pretty sure 2015, 2016. It's been Labour line for a while. So no criticism over the policy. It needs to be done. We need this. We need to stop. We need to stop these elements of exploitation events happening 100%. However, what is problematic inherently is the language, the cultural war language used to deal with this. Now, if we look specifically at the gangs of British Pakistani men who've worked in child abuse rings of networks, well, the NSPCC came out to criticise these comments. So Sir Peter Wanless, who's the Child Protection Charity's chief executive, said any child can be a victim of child exploitation, and adult perpetrators do not just come from one background. Sexual predators will target the most vulnerable and accessible children in society. There must be a focus on more than just race, so we do not create new blind spots that prevent victims from being identified. Yes, in a case where you're talking about a certain group of people being exploited, using specific rhetoric to hammer your case down is needless. Suella Braverman, absolutely needless. But point scoring in the culture war, saying, "Oh, we're not stopping political correctness," and "Oh, white British people are being sexually assaulted." Yes, that's probably true. That's true, but that excludes a large population of the country who are non-white, who are also victims of sexual exploitation, because anyone can be a victim of sexual exploitation. That's the purpose should be stopping the crime, not making it about ethnicity and race or whatever. And he goes on to say better data collection by law enforcement as part of the package of measures announced today would help ensure that all those working to protect children have a clearer evidence-based understanding of child sexual abuse and exploitation. And then we have so that's the comments from Sir Peter Wanless, and then we have the sort of the fact of the matter. And well, the actual data behind, and this is the reason why I'll say this is culture war stuff and rhetoric, because previous Home Office Commission research found most group child sex offenders are men under the age of 30, and the majority of them are white, while adding there is not enough evidence to suggest members of grooming gangs are more likely to be Asian or black than other ethnicities. Well, that's that's Suella Braverman's department, and their research says that the majority of group child sex offenders are white. I mean, we know that this is tangential and complete. No, it's not anecdotal, but we know that the EDL, one of the English Defence League, the far right racist. I don't even know if they're still going, but if you're not familiar with the EDL, horrible lot of basically keep Britain white sort of people. They had one of their leaders, and they had a group of people that were all arrested for God, I think child sex offences, and that was an issue in that group. For example, which I think is often forgotten. We have these sensational. No, that's not even the right word. I can't think of the word that I'm looking for. Sensationalized. Thank you. We got there in the end. Sensationalized news stories from the Rotherham grooming gang, but because that's something that needs to be talked about. But then you can't base your evidence off of news stories. You have data collection, and if your office is saying, well, here's the data, let's go with it, why on earth are you bringing up the rhetoric of what is actually then a minority position, other than the fact that you're culture war point scoring? And that is absolutely, it should be unacceptable. Because for a start, I mean, race and ethnicity and sexual exploitation and child exploitation and rape, you can't relate them, because they're opportunistic crimes committed by a number of depraved people, and people are going to be depraved all over the world. That's just just how it happens, and that's horrible. I mean, this depravity is horrible. Like what these people do is horrible. Making it based on identity levels like ethnicity. Okay, well, is the data there? Well, they don't have the data. That's what they want to collect. So why are you saying it? Rhetoric. It's unnecessary rhetoric. It's point scoring. It is incredibly problematic because there's no data there. Why your own department's data does not suggest that. And obviously, if they collect data and the data happens to then say, they get the data, they make a number of arrests, and the majority of the people they're arresting in these grooming gangs are British Pakistani men. So what Suella Braverman is saying, and she happens to be proved correct, is that okay? Well, then there's data there. But if that's not the case, and the majority of the people arrested continue to be white, what she said there is nothing more than complete rhetoric. She shouldn't even be saying it in the first place, because she should be focusing on the issue, which is victims being abused. Abuse should be priority, not creating a narrative. When you're talking especially about crime, narrative comes afterwards. You work from the evidence, and then you work a narrative out. You don't trying to solve a murder, you collect as much evidence as possible, and then you create the narrative from there. You don't create the narrative and then look for the evidence to back yourself up. The same for these crimes. Because these grooming gangs are ruining people's lives. You don't say, well, yeah, here's our narrative. Now let's go find the evidence for that. It's that no, we have people in this country who are being abused by horrible people. We want to stop them, whoever they are, wherever they are. We want them arrested, put in prison, never to see the light of day. That's what you want. You want, it's not even tough on crime. It's tough on absolute depravity. Go and do that. Stop bringing culture, political correctness. Stop it. Stop. Because it doesn't even make the Conservatives seem tough on crime. It makes them seem more concerned about blooming race and ethnicity than they are actually stopping people being sexually abused. It's ridiculous. It is. It gets to the point where it's just unnecessarily unacceptable. You know, it's it is an issue that there is the issue that seems to be around minority ethnic communities is underreporting. That seems to be the issue that I think we got from some data. Was it the J inquiry? Off the top of my head, just find the source. I think it was the J inquiry. The Rotherham Council Commission. Professor Alexis J, a former chief social work advised to the Scottish Government to conduct an independent inquiry into its handling of the child's exploitation reports since 1997. I think a lot of the inquiry was actually local, and it says here local Pakistani women's groups had described Pakistani girls being targeted by Pakistani taxi drivers and landlords, but they feared reporting to the police out of concerns for their marriage prospects. So that's that's internal marriage community issues there, and again, so making this statement, white British girls being targeted by Pakistani men. Well, here, in the report following the Rotherham situation, well, you actually have it being an internal to the ethnic community in question. Well, why are you not bringing that up? That's something, that's hard inquiry evidence that we got. That's an issue in itself. Reporting because they feel pressured not to be reported. I'm sure that happens with a lot of abuse cases where people feel pressured not to make a report, obviously for different reasons. In this case, marriage prospects. Certainly, an issue. Talk about that. If you want to talk about white British girls being targeted by Pakistani men, nuance it and talk about the other data. She doesn't. Is she aware of the J inquiry? Probably not. She probably doesn't know what's going on. She reads a piece of paper. Oh, look, what will score us points in the culture war? Oh yeah, Rishi, you mentioned political correctness. I'll handle the white British girls targeted. We've got to protect our white British girls. We've got to protect everyone. You're in a country. You're in the party that's tough on crime. You want to be tough on all crime. You just why and okay, this could be me making a mountain out of a molehill, but I really don't think it is, because I think this is so reflective of how the Conservatives are approaching like sort of country-based issues at the moment, everything has to be tied to the culture war, because their base of about five supporters, the last people in the country remaining that desperately support the Conservatives are loving this and eating it up for breakfast. Everyone else is just like, what on earth? And this isn't me coming with a political bias. This is me coming with just objectively, the issue is not the culture. Like the cultural element is not the issue. It is an issue in certain cases, but it's not the issue. Again, this has to be rationalized. It has to be put into context. The Conservatives are not doing that at the moment. Objectively, they are making their supporters eat up this rhetoric, this cultural rhetoric that, in all fairness, the Labour Party were playing until probably until after like during lockdown. That obviously we had following the Black Lives Matter rallies, and we had very heavily cultural war based thing, and I think really maybe you'd say that sort of Ukraine was the turning point, and the sort of gas prices going up has was sort of been the turning point for the Labour Party. Obviously, the Labour Party um still very much on one side of the culture war. They've not abandoned it completely, but then pivoting because they're realizing that a lot of people in the country are more concerned, and this is reflective of the data of, is it 51% of people support the illegal migration bill, 19% think it's a key issue. um that it's people are thinking about it. Of course they're thinking about it. We're 50-50 split on most of the issues like America. However, we don't think it's a priority because we have rising gas bills, we've got housing problems. That students have housing problems now. I think it's that's becoming an issue. In my area, I was reading yesterday evening that students are struggling to find properties, and they started looking last year for the next academic year, and they're struggling to find properties. We have a wide range of food issues. We've had supply issues in our shops for a long time, and we were told, oh, it's harvest. We know we've got issues. We've had bird flu that's affected our animal population, and that went over Christmas. We've just had so many issues. Big societal issues that are affecting. I mean, everyone um, other than the extremely rich that can just cruise past them. But the majority of the country are affected by this, and that's why, um, obviously, they'll people on the right. You have large conservative supporting communities from working class areas. They will be liking the culture war stuff, and they may still continue to support the Conservatives. But they'll also be thinking, yeah, but we're also struggling. When are we going to talk about something a bit more important? Everyone, I think, and this is affected by the polls. Labour have got still. I think I've seen the last wave of polls. Labour have still got a 25-point lead, and the reason why, again, Labour aren't offering really much in the way of an actual solution. Certainly not what I'm not seeing. Major solutions from the Labour Party. But what they're doing is they're saying, well, we know the country's got issues. We're going to put money into solving them. And yeah, look at what these clowns are doing. Oh yeah, they're talking about the culture war. Yeah, by the way, and I think that the response of Yvette Cooper was almost, you know, it was amazing, and it was amazing because um, this is what should happen in politics. Oh yeah, bypass all of the problematic stuff that Suella Braverman said. Yeah, by the way, we suggested this about a decade ago. Like, just blunt, say it how it is. You know, Labour has been calling for this for years. we've had the Conservatives in power, obviously since alone since 2015. So it almost at a decade of sole Conservative rule in the country. Say rule governance. Make it sound a bit authoritarian. Sole Conservative governance in the country. You can just say, yeah, but we suggested this ages ago. Here's our manifesto from 2015. I don't know if it's in the manifesto, but I can't remember whether I saw that. But here's where we said it. Here's the evidence. Jog on. You're late to the party. That's all you need to do. Have policy. Have proper critical policy. And if the Conservatives, if they lose the next general election and then they go into they form a shadow government. Conservatives, stop playing the culture war. Have some critical policy. Have it there. Have it to hand. And when the time comes that the country the party that's currently governing the country is incompetent, and so incompetent that they're defaulting on cultural rhetoric because they're running, and the cultural rhetoric actually could have been blunting the fact that Labour had suggested this for ages. There's another thing that I've just sort of considered is that this could be a smokescreen. It's that adding one and the other. Obviously, it's point scoring with your base, but also it's the so then when people come to criticise what Suella Braverman and Rishi Sunak have been saying, they fight on two fronts. You've got Yvette Cooper saying, well, no, we said that ages ago. And then you've got people coming out and saying, well, you can't say that about ethnicity, it's unsubstantiated. Well, there's two things that you've done wrong there. I mean, that's two ways to lose, really, embarrassingly. But yeah, that's what you do. You have policy, real policy. And I guess that's probably an issue in America. And we were saying about solutions, I was saying earlier about there are no solutions because no one seems to have much policy other than social. And the Conservatives are trying that in this country, and it's not working because Labour have had policy, and now it's coming up because now the policy that we need to stop a lot of these social issues, Labour have probably been suggesting for a good long time, because the Conservatives have only let these issues get worse, and that's what you've got to hold the party responsible for letting the country get into the situation it is in, and there is no excuse. Boris Johnson lying through his teeth. I mean, all the lies that's coming out, he's told even onto committees about Partygate. It's lie after lie after lie. And politicians normally aren't very good at telling the truth. And that's, by and large for most, a lot of politicians, because they need to manipulate situations to make them stand in good faith. It's horrible the way that modern politics is played, because it's literally modern politics is played to the media. It's very performative. A lot of the nitty gritty stuff that goes on in Parliament, the sort of like letter writing, data arguments, and that sort of thing. It doesn't, they actually have serious, substantial conversations about things. People don't want to hear about it because it's just boring, or boring, quote unquote boring. The most important stuff, that dialogue, that we need, and I think our system promotes a lot better than the American system. In terms of that, doesn't necessarily come over with governing, but it certainly comes over with the general system. Is that it's a problem that we have. With the government seems so out of touch. The culture war. The culture war is an issue, but it's like not an internet issue. It's like an internet issue or a news issue. Okay, and they're playing this sort of performance to the news. Like, oh, look at us, we're talking, and then people will say, oh yeah, they're targeting these gangs that are hurting our white British women. It's just completely unnecessary, completely problematic, and needs to be tackled. And I will continue to tackle culture war based issues from both sides, because I think the culture war is just inherently flawed and will only serve to polarize our our country, and it's polarizing America as well. And I'll be here to call it out, and I will continue to do so. So I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. I hope that it's interesting that continue to doing these segments, especially Trump is Trump is an ongoing story, and well, there's something new every week for us to talk about with the government, and apparently so. So yep, I'm enjoying smashing these out, enjoying making them once a week, sort of keeping up with the times. Again, if you've got anything that you want me to talk about, send it over. Um, Continue the conversation down in the comments. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.